Imagine a world teetering on the edge, a mere breath away from an unimaginable catastrophe. A world where the fate of billions rested on the decisions of a few men, locked in a high-stakes game of nuclear poker. This wasn't a dystopian novel. This was October 1962, and the world was holding its breath during the Cuban Missile Crisis. 13 harrowing days that pushed humanity closer to nuclear war than ever before or since. It was a period of intense moves, chilling photographs, and desperate back-channel diplomacy that tested the very limits of the Cold War. The Cold War was a shadow stretching across the globe, a silent ideological battle between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. For years, the threat of nuclear annihilation had been a distant, terrifying possibility, a concept discussed in hushed tones. But that changed in a single gut-wrenching moment. On October 14, 1962, a United States U-2 reconnaissance plane soared high above Cuba, its cameras capturing images that would send shockwaves through Washington and beyond. What those photographs revealed was nothing short of a nightmare. Soviet missile installations under construction. Not just any missiles, but medium and intermediate-range ballistic missiles, capable of carrying nuclear warheads. These weapons, positioned just 90 miles from American shores, could strike major United States cities within minutes. The implications were immediate and horrifying. Intelligence had suddenly become policy, demanding an urgent, decisive response. President John F. Kennedy and his advisors were confronted with an existential threat, a direct challenge that could not be ignored. The feeling was one of profound vulnerability, a sudden realization that the shield of distance had vanished. The discovery plunged the Kennedy administration into a maelstrom of frantic, secret meetings. This group, known as ExComm, the Executive Committee of the National Security Council, was tasked with navigating an impossible choice. The options laid bare were stark and terrifying. A full-scale airstrike on the missile sites, which almost certainly meant an invasion of Cuba and war with the Soviet Union. A direct invasion of the island, guaranteeing a bloody conflict. Or a more measured, yet still dangerous, naval quarantine. The pressure in those rooms was palpable, the air thick with the weight of global responsibility. Kennedy, haunted by the recent Bay of Pigs fiasco, knew that any misstep could trigger a chain reaction leading to global devastation. He listened, debated, and ultimately chose the quarantine. This wasn't a blockade, which was an act of war, but a defensive quarantine, a carefully framed political and legal maneuver that bought the United States precious time and room for measured escalation. A way to apply pressure without immediately resorting to outright war. It was a gamble, but one he believed offered the best chance for peace. With the decision made, the world watched, unaware of the full extent of the danger. United States Navy ships steamed towards Cuba, forming a formidable line in the Atlantic. Their orders were clear. Stop and inspect any vessel heading for the island, especially those suspected of carrying military cargo. The tension at sea was unbearable. Soviet ships, some undoubtedly carrying more missile components, continued their course towards the quarantine line. There were moments of extreme peril, tense maneuvers, and ambiguous orders that nearly sparked hostile encounters both at sea and in the air. Sailors on both sides, young men far from home, found themselves staring across a narrow expanse of water, knowing that one wrong move, one misread signal could ignite the fuse of global conflict. The world held its breath, waiting to see if the Soviet ships would challenge the line, if the first shots of a nuclear war would be fired in the vast, unforgiving ocean. As the naval standoff continued, but desperate search for a diplomatic solution unfolded behind the scenes. Publicly, the rhetoric was fierce, but privately, a lifeline was being extended. Private letters, raw and urgent, flew between Kennedy and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev. These were not formal diplomatic notes, but personal appeals. Two leaders speaking directly, trying to find a way out of the abyss. Robert Kennedy, the president's brother and attorney general, played a crucial role as a secret envoy, meeting with Soviet Ambassador Anatoly Dobrinin. The compromise that eventually emerged was a delicate dance of public demands and secret pledges. The United States publicly demanded the withdrawal of Soviet missiles from Cuba. In return, a secret pledge was made. The United States would not invade Cuba. And, in a crucial, highly controversial concession, the United States also agreed to secretly remove its Jupiter missiles from Turkey. Weapons that were considered obsolete but still represented a direct threat to the Soviet Union. It was a bitter pill for Kennedy to swallow, but it was a path to de-escalation, a way to give Khrushchev a face-saving exit. Even with these back-channel negotiations underway, the crisis was far from resolved. In fact, it produced moments of acute, terrifying danger that could have easily spiraled into catastrophe. On October 27th, a United States U-2 reconnaissance plane was shot down over Cuba, killing its pilot. The immediate reaction in Washington was one of outrage and a demand for retaliation. But Kennedy, with incredible restraint, held back, understanding the delicate balance. Perhaps the most chilling incident involved a Soviet submarine, the B-59. Deep underwater, harassed by United States Navy depth charges intended to force it to surface, the submarine's crew, exhausted and cut off from communication, believed war had already begun. The captain, Valentin Savitsky, ordered the preparation of a nuclear torpedo. But one man, Vasily Arkhipov, the flotilla's second-in-command, refused to authorize the launch, demanding that all 3 senior officers agree. His cool head, his insistence on following protocol despite the immense pressure, prevented what could have been the first use of a tactical nuclear weapon, a decision that would have undoubtedly triggered a full-scale nuclear exchange. These near misses, these moments of human error and miscommunication, underscored the terrifying fragility of peace, hanging by a thread of individual decisions and sheer luck. Finally, after 13 agonizing days, the world breathed a collective sigh of relief. Khrushchev publicly announced the withdrawal of Soviet missiles from Cuba, and the United States, after careful verification of the missile removal, lifted its naval quarantine. The crisis was over, but its lessons were profound and immediate. The experience highlighted the desperate need for direct communication between the superpowers. This led to the establishment of the Moscow-Washington Hotline, a direct communication link designed to prevent future misunderstandings from escalating into global conflict. It also spurred the first serious arms control conversations, a recognition that the unchecked proliferation of nuclear weapons was a threat to all. The Cuban Missile Crisis forced a deeper, more visceral appreciation for the dangers of nuclear brinkmanship, a realization that the game of chicken could have no winners. The legacy of those 13 days continues to shape international relations and crisis management doctrine. Leaders, advisors, and intelligence analysts learned invaluable lessons about the critical importance of restraint, the necessity of verification, and the power of back-channel diplomacy when formal channels fail. The episode fundamentally reshaped nuclear policy, moving away from the aggressive posturing of the early Cold War towards a more cautious, pragmatic approach to managing nuclear arsenals. It was a stark reminder that even in the darkest hours, diplomacy and human reason can pull the world back from the edge of destruction. The Cuban Missile Crisis stands as a powerful, enduring testament to how terrifyingly close miscalculation can bring global catastrophe. Yet, it also serves as an inspiring example of how, through a combination of intelligence, diplomacy, and extraordinary restraint, humanity can navigate its way through the most perilous of times. It's a story that reminds us of the constant vigilance required to maintain peace, and the profound responsibility that rests on the shoulders of leaders. If you want a focused episode on the intricate U-2 imagery analysis, the harrowing naval encounters, or the controversial Turkey trade-off, comment below and let us know which angle to explore next.